Hey, what's up? It's Chris, the Drone Geek, and on today's episode of Let's Talk Drones, you'll notice that things are a little different here. That's because I'm on the road, I'm traveling, I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in my hotel room. I have a client shoot tomorrow, so that's why I'm not in my office like normal. But let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Today's video, we're gonna talk about how to replace the prop guard on the GEPRC Cinelog 35. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you know what happened to my drone. If you don't, and you're curious as to how I took a big chunk out of the middle of the prop guards, the ducts on the GEPRC, here's what happened. I was flying, just sort of getting good at flying fast and doing banks, turns, all these different things at a higher rate of speed. Well, the sun sort of obscured my vision at one point, and I ran this thing smack dab into the middle of a steel beam on a small retention wall just outside of my house. So that's what led to this happening. I also broke the front two propellers, but the rest of the drone stayed intact. So the prop guards did what they were supposed to do, the ducts did what they were supposed to do and protected the rest of the drone from any kind of damage. So really, I got away pretty lucky that this is the only thing that happened, and I lost a couple of propellers. So with this drone, you can't send it in like a DJI drone and have it fixed. At least I don't think you can, but I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that you can't. So this is what I had to do. I went out, I bought new prop guards for the GEPRC Cinelog 35. Now, I've never taken apart an FPV drone like this. Never done it. The only thing I've done even remotely close is I took the shell off the DJI FPV and I changed the roll bar on the DJI Avata for the original Dobo GoPro mount for the Avata. So that's the only experience I have with taking a drone apart and putting it back together. If you have the GEPRC Cinelog 35, I'm gonna show you right now how you can swap that prop guard off. We have the Cinelog 35, we have our replacement ducts, and we've got the tools we're going to be using to make the swap. Now, before we do any of that, I do just want to bring attention to the complexity of how the duct guards are mounted to the body of the drone. There are a lot of small contact points here. It's going to be important you pay attention and keep track of how you removed the screws so that you don't lose track and you don't put the wrong screw in the wrong place and risk having to start the whole process over and figure out where each screw goes. So the first ones we're going to talk about are the obvious ones. On the top of each arm here, you'll have 4 screws in each arm, so it's a total of 16 just to start. You have to remove all of the screws because what we have here is the duct is mounted between the motor and the actual arm of the drone. So we have to make sure that we remove all the screws, and then this motor will fall loose and we'll be able to remove the duct guard then. So that's the first set of contact points. The next set is actually on the bottom here. We've got 4 screws in each corner. We're gonna have to remove each one of those. And then as if that wasn't enough, we have screws underneath the shock absorber, the vibration dampener on the camera mount, and we have another screw here that actually also holds the antenna in place on the GEPRC Cinelog 35. So you're gonna have a few things falling loose. We're gonna have to keep track of the parts for the vibration dampener for your camera mount. We're going to make sure that we are careful removing the screw that holds the antenna mount in there. And then we also need to make sure that we're careful with the motors once we remove the screws in each arm. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna move our replacement duct guards out of the way for now. And we're going to start in. I have this star wrench right here. It fits perfect in these screws, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use it. It is not the one that I received with the Cinelog 35. If you prefer to use that, I would recommend using that, but this one gives me nice range of motion and I can usually get these things unscrewed pretty quickly. We're not gonna sit through the whole thing. I am gonna speed it up as I'm removing the screws, so just bear with me and then we'll move on to the next step. If there's anything that you need to know as I'm removing these things, I'll slow everything down and explain what's going on. Let's get started. So the first thing I ran into is you have to remove each of these screws. I thought this would just fall loose after the motor was unhooked. That is not the case. You actually have to remove each of the screws before you do that. We'll go ahead and we'll remove each of these in all of the corners. dropped a frickin' screw. There it is. Perfect. Okay, so we've got all of the motor screws unscrewed. So you see the motors are sort of flopping loose there. I'm just gonna be very delicate as I'm working the rest of the way, not to damage the motors or the wires that connect them to the brains of the drone. We'll go ahead and instead of flipping it over like we did at the beginning of the video and looking at those, we'll actually remove the plate for the vibration dampener and get the screws that are underneath each side here. Let's start easy though, and let's remove the screw that connects the plate on the top of the drone to the bottom and the duct guards. It also connects, I'm gonna put this in a separate pile, the antenna holder, the antenna mount to the rest of the body. So that is now free and loose in a way, so just be careful when you're operating with that. The next thing we wanna do is pay attention to the vibration dampener. Now, I'm not going to need to remove these tiny screws. This is the GoPro mount for this. You can leave that be whatever camera you're using, whether it's an Insta360, a GoPro, whatever, you can leave the actual mount for that on there. But what I do need to do is remove these vibration guards. And for that, I'm going to need a little bit of assistance from some needle nose pliers, because on the bottom of these things, you'll see you have a nut there that holds the vibration dampener screws in. So we want to keep that stationary so that we can actually unscrew each bolt from the nut. So we'll go ahead and start doing that now. You've got to be kidding me. This thing's a booger to get to. So you'll see that we have the wires for the arms that are kind of keeping that in place. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna reverse the process. I'm gonna use the Allen wrench to keep that in place and try to unscrew the bolt or the nut with my fingers. No, that's not gonna work. Okay, so I've just gotta find a way to get the pliers in there. That might work. Yeah, that's gonna work, I think. This is a lot harder to do on camera. Perfect, that's what we needed. Excellent, that is free. And we've got our bolt that we'll place there. Perfect, let's do the last one. Perfect, so we have the plate loose. So I can actually go ahead and pop the dampeners out of their respective holes, which just takes a little bit of a tug. They're all rubberized, so they do just pull out. Now be mindful, the camera is still attached, so you don't tug too hard on that, pulling that out, because that will cause some problems for the connectivity with the camera. So we'll go ahead and just sit that like so. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and prop it up just a little bit. Okay, so now we move on to the last nut here on the top. We'll go ahead and remove that as well. And we'll put that over there with our top bolt. So we are getting closer and closer to removing the prop guards. Now I did lie, there are 2 more bolts here, it looks like, maybe possibly 3. No, just 2. There's 2 more bolts, it's this guy and this guy here. So we'll go ahead and remove those as well from the top plate. And then what we have to do is flip it over and look at the bottom. So there's that. Oops, come on. And there's that. And just for records keeping purposes, for future Chris, editing or putting this back together, the bolts for the arms are on the left pile, the bolts for the body are on the right pile. Remember that. Typically I'd have a container for these, but again, I'm on the road, so it's one of those deals where I don't have that luxury right now. So we'll go ahead and lift this up. Now you don't want to completely remove it because, actually, I think maybe lifting that up was a bad idea. Oh, that's why I can't do it. Okay. So we have the top of the body removed. There are cables keeping it attached to the flight controller. So those are gonna keep everything in place. We'll go ahead and remove the bottom plate, and then we will be ready to go with remounting the duct guards. So see, I wasn't lying to you when I said this is a little bit of a process. So the last ones that we have here are these 4 bolts in the middle. That's going to be what is holding the rest of this together. So we'll go ahead and we'll remove these. We need to be careful with the antenna and the rest of the guts of this drone. We don't have any mishaps here, because at this point, that is well beyond my pay grade if something goes wrong. Come on, it's loose. It wants to come out, but it's not going to. Okay, there we go. Bottom screws are on the far right pile, just so we are aware. And I'll speed the rest of this up so you don't have to watch me struggle, unless you like that kind of thing. Oh, interesting. So that's an interesting dilemma. Not really a dilemma per se. So we've got most of the drone disassembled. In fact, I think I can pull this one off. Yeah. So this prop guard is off, ready to be thrown away. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And the dilemma that I ran into here is that there is a little zip tie, that's holding the camera wire in place. Oh, wait, I think I can actually wiggle this out. Hold on. No, okay, not a big deal. All right, so we have that one. We can go ahead, chuck that one as well. So we're ready. This is the D-bodied, disassembled GEPRC Cinelog 35. Yeah, I mean, it's a mess. I'm looking at this and I'm freaking out a little bit because it's like, how am I gonna put this back together? But we're gonna do it. We have to, because I don't want to have to screw around with this too much longer. So we'll go ahead, put the other deck guards in place, and we'll start by putting them back together one at a time, because I feel like that would be easier rather than trying to do all 4 sides at once, or all 4 corners at once, both sides at once. Let's go ahead and start. So we've got all of our pieces here. Let's put, I believe this would be the left side on. Yes, that would make sense. So we'll go ahead, we'll get everything lined up like it should be. And then we will get this, because that's where the camera mount goes. We'll get that there. Okay, perfect. And actually, we want to bring this Okay, so I think what I've decided is I am going to screw the motors back in first, because then that will mount. No, we're gonna flip it over. We're gonna do this the right way. I've got everything sort of hooked up the way it's supposed to be. I'm just trying to be super careful because this is new to me. So let's go ahead and screw these guys in and see if that helps first. Okay, so we've got that reassembled. And I actually wonder, maybe we do have to go back and do this. Yeah, that's gonna be important. Okay, I'm an idiot. So I do have to do these all at once. That's unfortunate because I was really hoping I wouldn't have to. Right? Yeah, okay. So I will have to actually put this next pair on as well. So it's important to note that on this back set, we actually have to stack where the antenna mount is, because they line up that way. So that's gonna be super important to know. And then we also want to, this top body is killing me here. Okay, so we also want to bring this down around. And we will loop it in there. And then this guy will come right there. Okay, so the camera mount's ready. That's looped in. Okay, all right. Woo! That's what I'm talking about right there. All right, so we finally have that remounted. So, moral of the story, do not do these one at a time. We learned something together there. You're gonna have to mount them both and then go top plate down. Now I've already got the bottom plate all set up with the screws, so it's literally just a matter of lining everything up on the top and then remounting everything. So we'll go ahead and start that process now. Just being very mindful and careful with the motors, as well as the cable that connects the camera for the FPV goggles. Oh, yeah, before I do that, I actually missed a step. I have to put the antenna, or the antenna mount back on to that post right there. Now we're ready to remount the arms and the top, being mindful of those motors again. Okay, we are set. That was a lot smoother than I was setting it up to be. So we'll go ahead and we will re-put the screws for the top back in where they're supposed to be. I'm gonna go ahead and get the camera mount out of the way first, or the front end out of the way first. Okay, so hard part's over. We got the drone back together, all the guts look good. We'll go ahead and plug a battery in just to make sure everything's still working, but I don't see why it wouldn't. So now the next part is getting the vibration dampener on the camera system set back up. This shouldn't be too hard, it's just gonna be more of a pain getting everything lined up. All right, we've got those back in place, and it seems like everything is just as it should be. Yeah, everything's just as it should be. So we've got nice vibration dampener action on the camera. So now the last part here is just to put the screws in each of the motor arms. We'll be a little bit involved just getting everything lined up, but it shouldn't be too hard. We just have to be super, super careful to not thread the screw holes on the motors. That would be a bad deal. So I think what I'd recommend is actually getting one of these started first. Easier to focus on rather than having 4 different screws in all of the holes and then having to line up each screw. I think if you do one, that should give you a good enough guide for the rest of them. Just like that, we have a new and improved GEPRC Cinelog 35 with our new prop guards / ducts already attached to it. It's just that simple, but it's also sort of that complex too. Definitely understand why you might be looking for a guide, because this is definitely not brain surgery or rocket science, but not necessarily the most straightforward thing either. Now, not that we played around with any of the wiring really, we just had to sort of manage some of it, but just to make sure that everything is okay, I'm gonna go ahead and plug a battery in. There we go, everything's good. All the motors moved as I turned it on. They twitch a little bit on these types of drones when you start it up and provide power to it. And it seems like everything else is working just fine. So, mission accomplished. So that's what goes into changing the ducts or the prop guards on the GEPRC Cinelog 35. Not overly difficult, but not necessarily simple either. So I hope this video helped you navigate those waters if you find yourself needing to replace the ducts or the prop guards on your Cinelog 35. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up icon down below. It helps me out a lot, gets this video out into the algorithm for more pilots like you that might be having some trouble with some damaged prop guards on their GEPRC drone. If you really liked this video, you love drone content shot by drones, about drones, and for drone pilots, this is the channel for you. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you really, really, really liked this video and all of the other content on my channel, make sure you hit the bell icon. You'll be the first to know when I post a new video. Until next time, I'm Chris the Drone Geek, and I am out of here. See ya.